Hi, Umber, and I just wanted to reply with a more in-depth comment about this. So this is going back to my video about the purpose of higher education, and I left a comment basically saying that a lot of these higher education institutions, and frankly, even like K through 12 institutions, have been derelict in their duties as far as preparing people for the world at large and preparing them to go into higher education. So you wanted to know, like, how do you think like critical thinking skills are missing from higher education? Well, I will try and link to some Substacks, probably like make a video on those later, but there's just like commentary from different professors. I have family members that are in academia. I have friends that are in higher education, and they have told me that the quality of students has just gone down and down. And there's like a lot of reasons why, like family stuff that's going on. People are not coming in knowing like, or children are not coming in knowing like basic skills. I think in this comment, I even left a comment about a girl who is in Connecticut who graduated from high school with honors and got to the University of Connecticut and was found that she's functionally illiterate. The reason why she is like, of course, there was some like ESL stuff going on, but the way they teach reading now is they don't do phonics based. They do like sounding out and like different type of things that are not conducive to actually learning like the grammar of the English language, right? Or like how things are spelled or how things are supposed to be sounded out. But that's like very remedial. As far as higher education is concerned, though, the issue that I find with like the critical thinking that is lacking in younger people, and I've seen this myself. I've talked to my mom on her job. She's noticed that like the younger workers are just less motivated and less inclined to like try and figure things out on their own. They really want to be spoon-fed things. An example of this, though, as far as higher education is concerned, is because higher education now runs more like a company or a business. They don't keep their standards the same. Like they change their standards to what their customer wants. So now the customers want state of the art gyms. They want a lot of social clubs and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like social aspect of college is very important, but one of the more insidious parts is that when the customers are not satisfied with the quality of the education because they feel that they're getting C's and D's and B's when they want to get A's, it puts pressure on professors to do grade inflation, right? So I was reading a Substack of a particular professor. I believe he was in the Midwest, but I think he was like, he was either philosophy or English. He wasn't like a hard science professor, but he would give out exams, like written exams, and the students were not catching the concepts, or they were doing like ChatGPT answers to stuff, right? And of course he would fail them. Like any sensible professor would fail these people, but he got pushback from his administration that basically, oh, you cannot fail 50% of your students because they are using ChatGPT or they're not sufficient. So by extension, he was kind of forced to give out inflated grades to students who were not meeting the standards for school. So this is where like the critical thinking becomes an issue, because if you give kids grades that they don't completely earn, now they have this degree and they can go out and say like, oh, well, I have a degree, but their degree, essentially, you could just wipe your ass with it because they're not doing things. They don't have that methodology to how they learn. Everything was done for just like rote memorization so they can get this degree and then they can go out and get a job later on. Another like way that critical thinking has kind of been corrupted for the last maybe 25 years or stuff. I mean, social media to me is all the evidence that you need that to know that like things have gone downhill. But another example is kind of like the whole issue with like the No Child Left Behind and like standardized testing. So standardized tests are predictive of success in college. Like SAT has a greater correlation with a child's success in college than even like their school GPA. Part of the reason I think that is because of the grade inflation that's going on. So because everyone is being pushed into the B or A student category, it basically, those categories don't have much meaning because there's a lot of people that are perhaps C students that are now getting like B's or B pluses. But anyway, the thing with standardized testing though, like the other issue with it is that some of these standardized tests, because it's all about like, oh, passing this test and getting the grade, people study not to get a holistic understanding of a concept or like get the theory or the philosophy behind, let's say, physics or English literature or, historical context. People study just on the basis of like, I need to know this fact so that I can make this grade, and I essentially throw it away. So it's like, you're not learning history to understand historical context, to understand what led to certain movements or certain rights coming about, or like learning, oh yeah, the Magna Carta was one of the preeminent documents that led to Western civilization's social contract as we know today, and like played a role in how we have the Constitution. People don't know that. They can probably tell you, oh, this is the Bill of Rights, this is the preamble, but they can't really put things into the historical context. And that becomes a big problem civilly, because now you have people that are voting and people who are making social commentary that don't have much of a historical framework for the things that are going on in society. And I'm not saying you need to be like a legal or historical scholar to have an opinion. No, you're living in society, so you are to an extent entitled to your opinion. But the issue is that people cannot kind of see other people's point of view because they are not looking at things from a historical context. They're looking at things or not historical, but like even a critical context of like critical thinking of, yeah, I think this person is wrong, but I could see why they believe the things that they do because of XYZ different motivations or different historical contexts that perhaps they lived through, or things that kind of inform and shape their opinion. It's just like very emotive the way people go about life now, it seems. So as for your last question of how things could be done better, I honestly, I don't know. I'm not an educator, so it's very hard for me to say how. And now it seems that people are just going on their own free will. So it's kind of hard to say to an adult, like, oh, you need to do this to be a better critical thinker. One of the things is, honestly, you need to get rid of, I know people are saying, oh, you could use AI for like education and things like that. Potentially we could see where that goes. But as it stands now, it seems that ChatGPT and all of these like AI tools, if anything, is actually making people dumber, because if you don't have, and this is another problem, if you don't have the critical thinking skills and the discernment to see and put an input into ChatGPT, get an output, and critically analyze that and say, is this true? Does this make sense within the historical context that I know? Or does this make sense mathematically or scientifically with what I know? Or like, oh, do experts also agree with this output that I got from ChatGPT? You're just going to go off and start like quoting things that are wrong. Like, I have used ChatGPT just as a test, and it says things to me that are scientifically wrong, right? Or like makes up data when you're asking it to do data analysis. But you need to have that kind of critical thought to know that it's wrong. So I think one of the things that would help is people need to actually stop relying so much on these like AI tools, or if you rely on them, the extent to which that they can go, and you get a second opinion. People honestly need to go back to reading books. Yes, you can get a lot of things like listening to podcasts and watching videos of like people just talking and kind of shooting the shit. But the thing is, like, everyone has kind of like their bias. And just because, like, for instance, just because I'm a scientist and I'm smart and like well-versed in that particular field doesn't mean that someone should necessarily take my opinion at face value when I'm talking about history or politics, right? Like, don't think that because someone is good at one thing that you can accurately rely on them for everything. Like, you need to develop that skill of looking at secondary sources and kind of knowing how to do some type of basic research for topics that are of interest to you, and use your discernment. You can't outsource that to other people, and you can't outsource that to a language learning model algorithm thing. So I hope I was able to answer some of your questions, and I thank you for your feedback and your comment.